Am I wrong for taking my ex to court for custody? As a divorce attorney, I always support people using the courts in order to get custody of their children if they cannot work it out on their own, because the child needs each parent in their life, and in most cases, one parent should not be able to dictate whether their child sees their other parent if there's no danger to the child. But let's see what happens in this case, and y'all let me know what you think by commenting down below. Let's jump into the facts. 2 years ago, a friend of a friend, Riley, 25 female, and I, 26 male, had a drunken one-night stand which resulted in her getting pregnant. Alcohol and adult fun time doesn't always mix too well. We didn't know each other that well, and I didn't think I wanted anything to do with the kid because I was relatively young and didn't want kids yet. But how is that fair to the woman? She's younger than him, but she is deciding to keep the kid, so he kind of has to be involved. I wouldn't want to pay child support or anything, and I told her this. She understood and said that she didn't need to force me into anything, but that she would be keeping the baby. So she's basically giving him what he's asking for. She's not gonna force him to do anything, but she would like to love on the child. This is kind of similar to the other case that we recently did, huh? I felt a little wary about that, but she argued that it was her body and her choice, so I relented. Just let her have it, guy. Riley said she wouldn't cut me out of her life, but that the baby would never know me as its father, just a distant friend of hers. I agreed because I doubted I would want to be that involved, and I was right with that assumption for a while. So in this case, he's going to change his mind after he wanted to abandon the kid first. This is just like the other one we covered, except it doesn't sound like he's willing to pay any child support. Shortly after, I began dating a girl, Allie, 25 female, who I fell for fast. Allie knows the basics about Riley and what happened. She was fine with it because Riley and I haven't seen each other in years, and she believes that this chapter of my life is closed and I don't want to revisit it. Recently, Allie found out that she was pregnant, and I was excited to have a child with her. So it's 2 years later, and he didn't want to be involved with the first child, but he wants to be involved with this child with this girl that he's in love with. This actually makes sense to me. The other child was an accident, so he didn't want to be involved with someone that he was not in a relationship with, and it sounds like he wanted termination, but Riley decided to keep the child. Allie, on the other hand, is a woman that he is in love with, so of course he's going to want to be a part of the child's life, and it's 2 years later, so it sounds like he's actually ready for that commitment at this time. I still don't agree with all these out of wedlock babies, but here we are. As her pregnancy progresses, I find myself wanting to connect more with Riley and our kid. Allie was not initially very happy with my sudden decision to want to be involved, but I reassured her that I just want to know about the kid. I asked a few mutual friends about Riley and what happened after we parted ways. Turns out Riley got married to someone when the baby was a few months old, and he's been raising our daughter as his own. That's the father that stepped up, and now all of a sudden he wants to come back into the child's life. This man is all this child has known as her father, and all of a sudden this other guy is going to come into her life at 2 years old, and she's going to be confused. Word got back to Riley that I was asking about her, and she invited me to our daughter's second birthday as an olive branch. I'm surprised that Riley actually let him come to the birthday party because she said she wasn't going to force him to do anything and let him go on about his life. She also said that the kid will only know him as a distant friend, but now she's inviting him to the child's birthday party. She could still introduce him as a friend, but I think it's gonna get a little bit awkward. My daughter doesn't look much like me, having many of Riley's features. She only seemed to get my skin tone and hair texture. It annoyed me a little bit that she was calling another man her daddy and that Riley had no care to correct her about who her real father is. You said that you didn't want to be involved. Riley made it clear that you would be known as a friend. This man married this woman and has been taking care of this child as his own, and you want to be called daddy and she doesn't even know you? Dude, get real. Having another baby on the way, I regret agreeing to Riley raising her without knowledge of her true father. Before I left the party, I pulled Riley aside and told her that I wanted to be involved and that I wanted to get a custody agreement filed with the courts. If you watch the other similar video to this, you know how this is legally going to play out, but let's get more of the facts and we'll jump into the analysis. She got mad at me and said that I couldn't sweep in when it's now more convenient and that she's not going to upset her daughter's life because I suddenly want to play dad. Riley is absolutely right on that one. She said she already has a father who loves her very much and doesn't need me to confuse a 2-year-old about who her father really is. Exactly. I agree with that too, Riley. Riley told me she may be open to explaining our relationship when her daughter is much older and can understand it. But right now, all I will be to her is a friend of her mother. My girlfriend got pissed at me. I can understand where Allie is coming from because what are you doing, sir? We already had an agreement on this. You already had an agreement on this. You're disrupting Riley's life, Allie's life, and the child's life. Like, get a grip, dude. My girlfriend got pissed at me, saying she only agreed to this because she thought I wanted to get to know the girl as a friend of Riley's, not her father. Allie told me that I was being an a-hole, trying to insert myself into a happy family, and that if I kept this up, I wouldn't be involved in our child's life either. I do not agree with using children as pawns, so Allie, I'm not on your side on that part. After thinking about it for a bit, I met with a lawyer yesterday about possibly getting custody. This is my child and I should be involved. The agreement that Riley and I had was verbal and there's no papers, so I mentioned it to the lawyer. The lawyer told me there may be a chance to get custody since the agreement was only a verbal one, so I have that going for me. Papers have been filed and Riley will be served with them by the end of the week. I feel good about my choices, but my mutual friends with Riley and my girlfriend have been all ignoring me. I don't think I was in the wrong. Oh my gosh, before we get into whether OP is legally wrong, let's jump into some of the Redditor comments to see what they think about this situation. First vote is that he's the a-hole. You best have some deep pockets. You are going to have to pay back child support before you get a chance to see that kid. That is not necessarily true. It will depend on the state as to whether he will have back child support and how far back it can go. But generally, child support is not a prerequisite to seeing a child. So that absolutely is not true. But whether he would owe child support back to the child's birth will depend on the state. Like here in California, you don't owe child support for a child until the person actually files and asks for the child support. But in other states, child support can go back to the birth or potentially back to the hospital stay if the person asks for it. Someone else says, you're a complete piece of poop. From top to bottom, you are garbage. You are a deadbeat father who is trying to F up a kid's happy family because you're selfish and self-centered. Jeez Louise, that was aggressive, but I definitely understand where they're coming from morally. Someone responds to that comment and says, I've rarely reacted so strongly to a post before, but you're so right. This guy makes me sick. Again, I cannot disagree with that perspective. Someone else says, you're the a-hole. You're going to try to rip this baby from the only parents she knows. You wanted nothing to do with the mom or the baby by your choice. The child doesn't know you. This was her first time you've ever seen her. Please don't do this to her. Now, this commenter was a lot nicer than the last one, and I do agree with them morally. But let's talk about whether the OP is in the wrong legally. As you guys know, I am licensed in California, so we are going to be talking about this custody situation through the California lens. It's not clear where this person is located. If you have a similar situation, make sure you are consulting with an attorney in your area. Remember, this is not legal advice. This is just my opinion based on my legal experience. So let's jump into the analysis. So generally, OP absolutely has a right to ask to see his daughter. Now, is he going to get full custody? Probably not, but he probably would start off with some professionally supervised visitation or just some regular visitation, and then he can jump into having joint custody with the child. Now, I have to say that Riley messed up in this situation because they had the agreement from the very beginning that OP was not going to be involved in this child's life. In California, you can terminate someone's parental rights if they abandon that child for a year. The abandonment includes not having contact with that child for a year and not paying any type of child support with the intent to abandon the child. They already agreed that he was going to have nothing to do with the child. In other words, they agreed that he would abandon the child and that Riley would just have custody of that child. Where Riley messed up is that she didn't file any paperwork asking to terminate his rights. These are two unmarried people, so they would have to establish that he's the father by him agreeing and acknowledging that he's the father, or through DNA tests and getting a court judgment about it. It doesn't seem like any of this was done here, but they can still ask to terminate those rights. He clearly abandoned the child for a year because the child is now 2 years old and he never seen the child until her second birthday. He also hasn't paid any child support in this scenario. So Riley should have filed something with the court asking to terminate OP's rights. And since she has another man who she is married to that is taking care of the child as his own, she more than likely would have been granted her request in terminating the OP's rights. But since she waited so long and he's back in the picture, he has a lawyer and he's filing for custody, the court is probably going to give him the opportunity to be a part of this child's life. Because like I said, it doesn't sound like they actually confirmed that he was the father. So there's no judgment saying he's the father, and he is now trying to be a part of the child's life, and she's only 2 years old. So the court will probably allow this to go forward. Now let's jump into the verdict. Morally, I agree with the comments that he is messed up for abandoning this child and telling Riley that he wants nothing to do with this child, but all of a sudden, because he has a child with Allie, he wants to be father of the year. But legally, he is entitled to see this child because Riley has not terminated his rights. She can try to do it now, but it's not likely to be successful. If you made it this far into the video and you haven't already, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe if you're not already. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you check out the next video, and I will see y'all all next time. Bye.